They're doing a movie about a giant green cartoon ogre, and they want a song for it. Would you think that was going to be the greatest movie ever in the history of the universe? Hi, this is Paul De Lisle from Smash Mouth. You're listening to Brian Colburn, and we're going to rock the Mercury Comet tonight!
What is going on, friends? Welcome to my weekly mixtape. I'm your host, Brian Colburn. Joining me tonight is Smash Mouth bassist and founding member Paul De Lisle. Paul, it's an absolute pleasure having you on the show, my friend.
I'm happy to be here, Brian. This is great.
Well, before we get into the topic du jour, let's start with the basics. What does the word mixtape mean to you?
Well, mixtapes used to be get a cassette tape and record all your favorite songs in a row and, play it for a girl you were trying to impress or something, and just show how cool of musical taste you have. What does it mean to you?
Oh my God, it means 200 episodes of this show of stories of the love that I had, starting with trying to find your favorite song on the radio, where you'd have to find the proper version, because if the DJ talked over it, that's not a proper version of the song.
And then you got to play and record at the right time too,
Yep. The thing I love about mixtapes the most is, for non-artists or for any type of music fan, you could tell a story to somebody based on who you are through other people's art. To me, it's a beautiful thing.
You make friends that way, and you find out who your people are, and where you belong, all kinds of things. It's also good for long drives,
And the thing that I loved about mixtapes before mix CDs was the fact that if you gave someone a mixtape, you put time into that. That wasn't something, you didn't just drag a couple songs onto a playlist. You put the effort in.
And you did put the effort in, because you're showing them who you are. And there's certain times where you're like, well, should I put this one on, or not? You might be a little drunk, and then the next day you go, maybe I shouldn't have put that one on.
Well, tonight we are here to talk about Mercury Comet, the first new Smash Mouth album in more than a decade.
Yes, how about that? Yeah.
But the band doesn't get to this point without quite the story behind it. So before we jump into the new music, I want to spend a little time looking back at the highs, the surprises, and the long road that led us here.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, as a former college football player, I've always loved this band name because of the connection to Mike Ditka's Smash Mouth Football.
Mhm.
When the band first formed, did you have any inkling that a name pulled from football terminology would end up becoming one of the most recognizable band names of the late 90s?
Absolutely not. In fact, the origin story of our band name is pretty simple, but it's kind of funny. It came about when, there was two different factions came together in Smash Mouth, like two teams. It was Greg and I, Greg Camp, the original guitarist and main songwriter of Smash Mouth, and Kevin Coleman and Steve Hartwell. We were two different teams coming together. And we started rehearsing. And then one day, Kevin, our drummer, he insisted on calling the band Smash Mouth A Go-Go. He wanted to call it Smash Mouth A Go-Go, and Greg and Steve and I are like, we didn't know about the A Go-Go part, dude. It's, baby Smash Mouth. But, you're right. It was a Mike Ditka saying. Kevin and Steve were huge football fans, and, playing Smash Mouth football, whatever. And at first, I didn't like the name, to be honest with you. Like it's kind of a violent connotation or whatever. But Kevin explained that he didn't mean it as like smashing someone in the mouth. He meant it as smash hits coming from our mouths. Like it's smash mouth.
And when you listen to the first album, Fush Yu Mang, you do hear a little bit of the quote unquote a go-go in the band's sound. There
is a go-go in the band sound, for indeed. Yeah. So I can see, the go-go that you mentioned there's always been in Smash Mouth. And this is one of the things that I always loved about Greg Camp's writing was he listened to such an eclectic, different styles of music. And one of them that we listened to back in the early 90s when we were, Greg and I were best friends and always together. And we listened to like bachelor pad music from like the late 50s and early 60s, like Esquivel or Martin Day. Like we just thought that was this cheesy, as cool as kind of music for that, hey, have a cocktail, like, something from 007 or something, Goldfinger. We just thought that music. was cool. And what if we combined that with like punk rock, and like made it modern kind of thing? So Smash Mouth music has sort of an element of that, I think, at least.
And the one thing I find really interesting about the band's origin story is a lot of origin stories start with a very long backstory of years grinding out in the clubs, waiting for that big break. Smash Mouth was picked up by Interscope pretty quickly after
Well,
you
not
formed.
that not that quickly. We had 2.5 years of really paying dues. Greg and I had been in bands forever. We were in different cover bands, and then we started working together in original bands in 1993. Our first band was a band called Lackadaddy that was doing really well in San Jose, and this is all original music. And then Steve Harwell came in and like freaking Hey Kool-Aid and burst through the wall and went, you're going to start a band with me, to Greg and I, and we were terrified of him. So we said, yeah, like, but no, we started Smash Mouth in November of 1994, and we didn't get our record till, June of 97. So we put in solid 2.5 years and really like rehearsing every day and going through ups and downs. So yeah, we did pay some dues in those 2.5 years. It wasn't exactly overnight.
And what did you learn during those times about the band and getting to the level that you did?
We learned about each other. I mean, we literally rehearsed almost every day. We weren't spring chickens at the time. We were all in our late 20s, and we all looked at this very seriously. And this might be our last shot. So we went at it, and we believed in our songs and the songs that Greg was writing and that we were all writing together. I believed in them. So Steve used to have this band mantra he would say to us every day. He'd go, "Give me 2 years. Just give me 2 years, and I promise we'll be famous." Well, liar. It took 2.5.
Now, sticking with Fush Yu Mang for a minute here, the album didn't follow a traditional major label recording process.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
What did that recording experience look like compared to what people might expect of a traditional newly signed band major label first album recording?
Okay. So what happened was, and this is always a good thing to do, we recorded a major label quality record first before we, got a. So that takes care of that. What happened was, here was the trajectory. It kind of started back in November of 1996. Smash Mouth got on the cover of BAM magazine, which in California at the time was like the Rolling Stone. This was a big deal. An unsigned band being on the cover of BAM meant you're going to get signed, like, because BAM had like Van Halen and Tom Petty on their cover. It was like the Rolling Stone. It was free and it was everywhere in LA. So if you were on the cover, everyone is seeing. We're just like, we made it. We're on the cover of BAM. So then we're wined and dined and we're playing in Hollywood and like, oh look, we're famous, whatever. And then a couple months later, nothing happens. Like this, and we're like, wow, we didn't get. So we had one last shot. We were playing at the Roxy in like March of 1997, and all the suits are in the audience, all the A&R people. It's our do or die. It's our last shot. Here they are. Here's your chance. Well, certain members of the band had a little too much to drink. We're set up about something, and it was a disaster. And Greg smashed his guitar after like the second song, and Steven stormed out. And that's it. We were done. We had to drive home to San Jose that night. It was a very long and quiet drive. But that was it. I thought, that's it. We blew our chance. We're done. So then we're licking our wounds, and weeks later, Greg calls me and he's like, "Hey, we're gonna make a record." Like, what? He's like, Kevin Coleman, our drummer, refused to let us give it. And our manager, Robert, he's the one who really stepped up at this time, because Greg goes, "Robert's going to give us $10,000, and he's got Eric Valentine. I don't know if you would like to produce it." I'm like, "What?" And my first thought was, I felt sorry for Robert. Like, I can't believe you're going to throw away, but but he had paid for with 10,000. That gave us 2 weeks in the studio with Eric Valentine, who had just done like Third Eye Blind's, original, which is a huge hit, and he's a huge producer. We're like, okay, we don't have time to waste. I just couldn't believe. The idea was, you've done so much work in these years, at least make the record, because these songs are great. And just because you had one bad show at the Roxy doesn't mean you shouldn't at least have something to keep as a memory, like a Polaroid picture. That was what it was. But we were working with Eric Valentine. So when we went in the studio to do that for 2 weeks, we were prepared. We were ready. We did it quickly, and we were, it was a good experience. And we had this new song that we'd worked up called Walking on the Sun that we'd never done. So we finished the record and we just thought that was it. We're done. It was like, isn't this something to show our friends or maybe try to impress a girl or something, you know? But we're done as a band. And I went on this short surf trip to Big Sur, and that's when everything happened. Greg and Steve went down to LA, and there's the whole Carson Daly thing, and they spun it once on K Rock at like 2 a.m. somehow. And when I came back from being gone for like 4 days, there's messages on my answering machine going, we just got signed to Interscope for $1.8 million. You know, I mean, it was just crazy. It was just unreal. And then everything happened really quick. I mean, we went from just being bums, just broke, like band failed, our cars breaking down. We have nothing. We live in these cars. All of a sudden, we're going to LA to make a video and going on tour with Sugar Ray and going around the world. It was really, you know, it really kind of messed with us like psychologically to go from that, you know, it really, within a couple months, we had a gold record, you know, it was just because they didn't have to, Interscope didn't have to group. We had the finished product, the album done and mastered by Eric Valentine. And Greg had done really cool artwork. So they just had to put their label on it and make a video and send it us on tour. So yeah, we did not take the traditional route.
And maybe when I brought up my question earlier about the band's kind of quick rise to stardom, maybe I should have started at this point because a lot of bands have to deal with the label being really involved in the recording process. But here, you didn't have to deal with them fronting the album or being really involved in that process. That all got taken out of it.
Right. No one bugging us in the studio. Robert paid for it and he left us alone with Eric. And all we needed was 2 weeks. We were ready. We had been rehearsing these songs for years, you know, and that's where it paid off in the studio. We were ready to record. And Eric was such a great producer. We were kind of over prepared, you know. And I remember listening to, I'm like, well, this sounds really great. Like we sound that great. Well, Eric Valentine helps a little, you know, like, but no, that was a great experience, really. But no one ever could have dreamed what would happen with those recordings, you know?
Now, looking at the album as a whole in its entirety, Fush Yu Mang has a more ska-punk energy than where the band eventually lands.
Right.
So looking back now, do you see that album as the beginnings of the Smash Mouth sound, or do you maybe see it as a different version of the band?
Yes, I think it's like a different version of the band. Greg and I loved ska punk at that time. It was, you know, and you had Goldfinger, all these the ska punk revival, and we loved it. You know, because we loved like the Specials, the Selector, all those, you know, second wave or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
But Greg and I were songwriters. The style didn't really have to do that. Those just happened to be ska punk songs, and we didn't want to have that sort of monkey in the back. And another thing that changed it. I remember about the Fush Yu Mang tour was a really, really long tour, like a year long. We went around the world for like a year, you know. I remember halfway through it, Greg said to me, he goes, man, these effing songs are super hard to play live. I'm gonna slow it down a bit. He's like, I can't play these after 4 beers, you know. That's like a little thing.
Well, I do want to dive into cover songs a little bit because I've always personally felt the best cover songs are ones where people forget their covers. And Smash Mouth always seemed to have a knack for this, whether it was Why Can't We Be Friends, Can't Get Enough of You Baby, or I'm a Believer. Those songs really felt like they belonged within the Smash Mouth universe, regardless of who wrote them. What was the secret of taking someone else's song and really making it your own?
Absolutely. And you bring up a very good point. I'll hear bands do covers of like the Beatles or something, and they try to do it just like them. It's like, wow, dude. Okay, that sounds great, but it's like lesser Beatles or whatever. You can't do that. You know, you have to put your own stamp on it. You can take a cover song and add some originality to it because I think it's sort of disrespectful to the original artist if you don't do that, if you don't try harder and try to make it better, you know? And that's, yeah, definitely. That was our thing. We'd see these, especially with sort of 60s style songs like Can't Get Enough or I'm a Believer. Those were just waiting to be beefed up, you know, and given respect, you know. Like Neil Diamond, he loved us for doing I'm a Believer. He said it was the best version. That meant a lot to us. Yes, I agree. You have to make it different. It's got to be exciting and you got to do something. You can't just make a copy of it like you're making the Kinkos or something. it's got to be more exciting or definitely have your band's flavor on it.
Okay, staying on the topic of covers, and I'm going to let my music nerd flag fly a moment here. Can't Get Enough of You Baby was originally Frankie Valli, but I feel like Smash Mouth's version was a bit more of a hat tip to Question Mark and the Mysterians.
It is Question Mark and I mean, that's the one that we take it. By the way, I am a effing huge Four Seasons fan, and Frankie Valli and the Four. I just love that we all did. That was part of the Bachelor. I didn't know they did a version of it. I thought the original was Question Mark and the Mysterians.
Believe it or not, it was originally recorded by the Four Seasons, though Question Mark and the Mysterians was the first hit version of the song.
I also thought it was Garland Jeffries, who did a lot of songs like 96 Tears.
You're reading my mind. Oh my God. Besides the fact that we're now best friends, 96 Tears was made a hit by Question Mark.
Yeah.
I know it's never been recorded, at least to my knowledge, that is, but has the band ever jammed on 96 Tears before?
Yeah, we have. People said, you got to do this song. It's such an obvious,
Because that is a Smash Mouth cover that's just waiting to happen. Let me put that out there.
That would definitely work. But we love those songs. We do it with love, like we don't want to disrespect the original artist and Question Mark and like, why can't we be friends? And that, yeah, our way is, it's disrespectful to try to do it exactly like the original, but you got to pump it up and kind of make it your own, I think. And then they kind of appreciate that, I think, like the original artist.
Of course. Now, long before streaming playlists became a thing, movie soundtracks could break songs, and sometimes the soundtrack itself could become more popular than the movie themselves.
Sure, yeah.
And Smash Mouth seemed to be everywhere during what I call the end of the soundtrack era, because in the 2000s, once playlists started, soundtracks became less of the event that they were, especially during the 80s and 90s when I was growing up. I think about Can't Hardly Wait, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Austin Powers. Was that something the band was actively pursuing, or did Hollywood knock on your door?
To be honest with you, I'll give you my perspective. At the time, we were just becoming, things were crazy. It's weird when you become famous quickly. There's all kinds of cycles. It's very, a lot of things can get overlooked here for a guy. I kind of left that to management and a label. We were busy writing, being on tour, dealing with this massive, like, life change of becoming just bombs nowhere to all of a sudden being famous. Like, so something slipped by, like all of a sudden, oh, we're doing this, video for, I was just running with the pack and just, rolling down the track that we were on, which was such a rocket ship ride. So I think a lot of our stuff was licensed to move thinking that, oh, it's a one-hit wonder and stuff. And we weren't a one-hit wonder. So honestly, I wasn't focused on that, like the movie stuff as much. I was focused on making the records and making the best songs we could and our live shows, the videos and stuff like that. That wasn't as important to me. I was like old school. Like, we got songs to write and to record, like, and the real part of it, the old fashioned, you write songs, you work them up and you play them live, and then you record them. So I left that stuff to the bean counters,
Now, you just said the thing about one-hit wonders. Most bands that are original acts dream of having a single hit song. And by this time in the story, Smash Mouth had already had several at the point of Fush Yu Mang, like what you mentioned earlier, Walking on the Sun. However, very few bands end up with a song that's not just a hit, but it becomes a part of pop culture.
Yeah.
All Star has been in movies, commercials, sporting events, you name it. At what point did you realize that this song had taken on a life of its own?
Yesterday. No, no. Getting back to your original point, the one-hit wonder stigma. We were labeled that more than anyone. People are like, I remember some San Jose writer said, if Smash Mouth isn't a one-hit wonder, I will eat a giant vat size of crow. I don't think he's done that yet. Like, people were just like, you're so a one-hit wonder. But I remember Mark McGrath from Sugar Ray said the greatest thing about, like, everyone kept saying when Fly was a big hit, oh, you're a one-hit wonder. Mark came back with, you know what? On the ladder of success, if you're in a band, like trying to get somewhere, one-hit wonder is like way up there, like everyone. And he kind of made a good point. But no, it wants to be, and thankfully, neither of our bands were one-hit wonders. But luckily, we sort of sidestepped the one hit wonder thing. We're in between Fush Yu Mang and Astro Lounge when we were on tour that whole time. We were at home for like 3 when we recorded that version of Can't Get Enough of You Baby, which was in the movie. And so, phew, even though it wasn't our second album, we did have, it wasn't a top 20. So we weren't a one hit wonder, which gave us time to sort of give more care to our second album. See what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
had time. Okay, phew, that gave us a, it's still in the top 20. Now let's make, and we were prepared to make our second record too, because Greg was smart. He started writing songs immediately when we were on the bus for the next record. Like they say, you have your whole life to make your first record and 6 months to make your second.
And it's funny you mentioned Sugar Ray, because I remember Sugar Ray long before Fly, because Lemonade and Brownies was the album that introduced me to them when they toured with Korn.
I love that version of Sugar Ray. That's the version that they were the first band we toured. We're very close to Sugar. They were the first band that we ever toured with. We both had hit songs. We had Walk and they had Fly. But besides Fly, the rest of their show was just straight. They had songs like Green Machine and RPM,
Yes. Rhyme Stealer.
Rhyme Stealer. And that summer that we toured there, I swear to God, I was commissioned. Mark McGrath was the greatest. He was such a great metal, and he still is, but he was a great metal front. They were a metal band,
Yeah.
And that tour was so much fun. I can't even.
People actually don't believe me when I say that Korn used to tour with Sugar Ray, and they're like, that did not happen. I said, yes, it did.
It did. Listen to Mark's voice. He's a great metal singer. He was such a great live performer. I mean, I loved that tour so much because they were playing that all they had was Lemonade and Brownies,
yes,
and Floored, their second album, which again was like a metal album. And then there's Fly, which was kind of like our album. It's like pop punk, Walking on the Sun, like that.
Well, we were talking about soundtracks a second ago. I apologize. We're kind of jumping all over the place here. Everybody is going to talk to you about Shrek, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But for now, I want to bring up a different movie. I want to bring up Rat Race.
Rat Race.
Okay. Both movies hit the same summer. Both movies featured All-Star, and both became favorites in their own respective ways. Shrek, obviously, with families, and Rat Race was one of the last really big ensemble comedies that I can remember in a long, long time. How did Smash Mouth suddenly find itself everywhere in Hollywood with All-Star?
Well, first of all, Brian, let me tell you, I made my acting debut and had a line in that movie.
Yes, you did.
I'm the guy that says, hey, let's get these guys some jackets. That's me. It's, hey. It came about at the time they would do that in movies. Our band was famous. We were a new famous band, so they put us in a movie. They did the same thing with Mudhoney. They did the same thing with all kinds of let's insert them in this movie. I think Mudhoney was in the Chris Farley and David Spade movie after Tommy Boy. What was it?
Black Sheep.
Yeah, I think they were in that one. Yeah, so it was called, I think, a Spin Doctors. You'd see, we'd be on TV shows or whatever. So you just got offered those kind of things. And it was a lot of fun because it made me realize I don't want to be an actor, man. Making movies is hard. Like we had that scene was like not even 10 minutes, right? Like Steve had more to do because he had that's all lines in it. But you have to be there. Like we were there for 5 nights. You get there. It's a night shoot. So you get there when the sun goes down at like 8 and you get in makeup and everything. And then you're there till like 7 in the morning. They might not call you to, you just have to wait. It took like 5 nights to do that 10-minute scene, which you learn a lot about. There's just so much sitting around and standing around. We're not actors, And it was fun because I was always next to Whoopi Goldberg. She was always you have to wait to stand there, and she bummed all my cigarettes. She smoked all my cigarettes. Back there, I had all the smokes. And John Lovitz, who's a cool guy, was talking about being on Saturday Night Live, and Whoopi went, "Shut up, John Lovitz. No one gives a fuck that you were saying." But I didn't say that. No. But it was really fun. You're just like hanging, because everyone, what I noticed is all actors want to be musicians. They all want to jam with us. They want to act, and we're just like, cool, man. You're like people every one of them was John Lovitz plays harmonica really good. He's like a really good harmonica player, So he jammed with us. And Breckin Meyer, remember that Breckin?
Oh,
Breckin,
yeah.
Seth Green. It's like Seth Green, and they were fucking cool guys, man. They wanted to know and hang out with us.
Have you kept in touch with anyone from that movie?
No. They're much too interested, I kept trying to get them stoned, but they wouldn't do it. I remember Seth Green said, I go, come on, man. Let's have a thing. And he said, no, I got to keep it pure for the kids.
Well, speaking of the kids, while Rat Race isn't brought up nearly as much as it should be, because I love that movie, Shrek has become larger than life for generations of children. Was there ever a point that All-Star became so big that you found yourself maybe hoping people would rediscover some other songs in the band's catalog?
Of course. I'm like, and that's kind of our secret weapon is people think that we're just like a pop with these few hit songs, and it helps us in our live shows. Yes, of course you'd think that. When Greg first wrote All Star, we had delivered our album Astro Lounge to Interscope, and they gave the old line that every day we don't hear a single. And Greg and I were fierce. How dare you, digging there's singles all over this record. But Greg took it as a challenge and went home, and in a very short period of time, in like 2 weeks, he wrote both All Star and Then the Morning Comes, which people forget was like a #2 hit.
Yes.
In the winter of '99, was a follow-up to All Star. It was a huge hit. And he wrote those two songs. I remember we both lived in Santa Cruz at the time, and I was at this bar, and it was like 1:30 in the morning, and he came running in, and he goes, come out to my truck right now. I got something to show you. And it was he had cassette demos of All Star and Then the Morning Comes, which he just written. Honestly, Brian, I thought Then the Morning Comes was the better song. I really did. I'm like, the other one's okay, but this shows what I know, And then we quickly recorded those, and All Star just took, I thought All Star was a great song, of course, too. And it was fun. We recorded it really quickly, learned it and recorded it, and then the rest is history. But I do want you to know this. I was deemed by Eric Valentine to be the best whistler in the band. So that's me.
Now, most hit songs at some point seem to fade. Somehow All-Star became a second generation hit through internet culture and memes. Was watching an entirely new age demographic discover the song decades after it first came out surprising to you?
Well, it was great. And I saw it firsthand because I have a young daughter. I have a 16-year-old daughter. So I could see her, all of a sudden I'm cool again. And Greg and I were actually talking about this the other night about why is it that song. But if you look at All Star, from the very beginning of the lyrics, it's a very uplifting, great message, and it's timeless and universal. I've always thought Greg Camp was the best songwriter in America, and I still do. And that was just he was just on fire at that point. And he did that kind of as like an FU to the label, like, I'll show you how to write it. It's not good. And he sure did, he did it as a response to that. And congratulations to him and us but yeah, who knew it would, that song came out, and I'm sitting here talking to you today,
Well, you've had multiple generations discover Smash Mouth. One who discovered it via CD in the 90s. There were kids who found the band through Shrek that grew up with the band. Then you have younger listeners now who found the band through social media and memes. Does it surprise you just how many entry points into Smash Mouth there are?
It's just wonderful. It's just like a gift. We're just like normal people. We're like, wow, we just can't believe it. None of us ever got to be like, we didn't have like rock star heads. We weren't like jerks. We kept each other. We're like, so it's just like everything's like icing on the cake, just a bonus, Of course, the movie has everything to do with it because every generation of kids is going to watch that movie. We didn't, at the time we did I'm a Believer for it, we had no idea. Every friend's like, they're doing a movie about a giant green cartoon ogre and they want a song for it. Would you think that was going to be the greatest movie ever in the history of the universe? And the thing is, when you do something like that, you record it and the movie doesn't come out till like over a year later. So you kind of forgot you did it almost. Oh yeah, we did that song for this. Oh, all right. I also remember this about recording that version of I'm a Believer is Eddie Murphy is a really good singer.
Oh yeah.
That.
I remember Party All the Time in the 80s.
Yeah, he can really sing. Like he's really good. He could have been like a pro singer.
Now, I want to take this moment to remind everybody listening that if you want to hear all the songs we're discussing in this interview tonight, you could do so over on the episode page at myweeklymixtape.com. Now, if somebody that's listening to this episode is thinking to themselves, okay, I know all the hits you're talking about tonight, Walking on the Sun, All Star, I'm a Believer. How do I dig deeper?
Well, Pacifico's Party, Come On, which was in a movie, and people know there are so many of Greg's songs that I love, like Always Gets Your Way from our fourth album. I thought that was going to be, I love that song. There's Padrino on our first, there's quite a few of them. But Pacifico's Party was after Astro Lounge, which was our, you know, day in this. It was such a redemption. I never thought we were a one hit wonder, and we come back with this record that sells twice as much. So that's, I was an FU. So now we have to follow up this one. We're not a one hit wonder, but we have to follow up. So our third album is important, and we wrote songs for it. And Greg was over at my house once, and he was teaching me songs. And then we were done. He's like, "You got anything?" And I'm like, "No, no." And my wife at the time walked by and goes, "Show him the disco song you wrote." And it was Pacifico's Party, which I'd written, but I wasn't going to show him. I thought it was too. And Greg loved it and demoed it, and he championed it, and we did it and recorded it. And I was so, that's what kind of person Greg Kemp is. He's a team player. He goes, "Paul wrote this hit song, you know," and it became the first single off our third record, which was the follow up to Astro. So this is a big single. I felt the pressure, and they do like test things, and this is going to be a number. This is going to be in the top. They kind of know beforehand. And then 9/11 happened right when Pacifico's Party. Yeah. And all of a sudden, no one wanted to hear about a Pacifico's Party anymore. And it was all like, and so that was it. It was doomed. But I think it's a good, and it did make the top 30, and it's in that movie with Lisa Kudrow and Christine Applegate. So that was kind of a victory.
And it was also on the band's All-Star Smash Hits album that came out in 2005. So it's recognized as one of the band's biggest hits.
And if it wasn't, yeah, it was the top 30 hit and everything. And I remember feeling bad that I'd let the band down, that it didn't was. And I was talking to my mom and dad, and they're like, "Oh, honey, we think it's a lovely song. Don't worry." You know.
Well, I'll tell you what, having worked in radio throughout 9/11, I remember the band songs that we were looking at, like, why was this pulled? Why was this pulled? And they actually had moratoriums going out saying you can't have anything too upbeat. And it shifted music on its ear for a while.
Yeah. No one wanted to hear about a Pacifico's Party, you know, and I understand that. But, you know, I'm still proud of it, and we still play it. Yeah. So that's one of them. But there's a lot of them. Greg didn't write, there was no filler on our records. I don't know if people really realize that if he had a new song, he'd come to me and be like, "I have this new song I'm going to say." And it was normally when most people do that, you're like, "Oh God, I got to listen to it. This guy's lame ass song." But with Greg, it was like Christmas morning, because if it had gotten that far, I knew it was going to be great. He didn't write any filler.
I want to start talking about the new album, but I think before we do that, we have to touch on one more serious topic here, because Steve Harwell's voice and personality were such a huge part of how people experienced Smash Mouth for several decades. And between his departure in 2021 and his tragic passing in 2023, the band has continued to move forward. What have you discovered about the balance of honoring someone's legacy combined with building a future for Smash Mouth simultaneously?
That is a very good question, and a tricky, you know, you walk a tightrope. That's a very, very good question. Steve, even before we were bandmates, we were best friends, Steve and I. I mean, we were partners in crime. Like we were up to no good. I loved the guy, you know, and you know, he'd never been in a band before he was truly an American original. There's no doubt. He'd never sang in a band before. He had such a strong personality and so much charisma. Greg and I, when we first, you know, started, we're like, well, he can't sing. He's, you know, he was a Harley Davidson mechanic at the time. Like, he's the most non-lead singerly looking Harley mechanic we've ever seen. You know, I think I saw a gun, and he's scary and dangerous, and we don't know, you know. But that said, we were also like he's nothing like what we're looking, but he's great. You know what I mean? Like, he can't sing and he's terrible, but he's great. People used to give us so much shit. They go, "Is this a joke?" Because Greg and I were kind of established musicians, and like, "Is he paying you? Is this for a birthday party?" What? And we believed in Steve. We really did. We're like, "No, man, he's got something you don't see," you know. And we were right. So that was good when he could say a big F you to everyone, and we stood by him, you know. So Steve and I were best friends, and unfortunately, he fell into the rock star, all the typical rock star trappings, and you know the rest of the story. It was a slow, painful thing to watch, but we never felt like. By that time, I was kind of the lead singer myself, but we always felt like we were going to keep moving ahead. I never. He was so strong. I was actually kind of shocked when he died, because even though I knew his health was failing, he was so strong. I just never thought he'd actually die. It still shocks me to this day, and it's still too recent to maybe I'm in denial, but I loved him. Greg and I loved him, and he was an American original, so you can't. And then we were lucky to find Zach, because Zach not only, when something like this sort of tragedy happens, you have a ray of sunshine. Zach was that ray of sunshine. But here's a guy that, look at, he's kind of the same physical type as Steve, which is important. He's a big dude with a thick neck, and he's way
Yeah.
taller. You know, he's obnoxious, and he's egotistical, and and he can really sing, and he can sing, and So when we had replaced Steve, he had retired. People that was several years before he
Yes.
died.
Yes.
So his death he wasn't in the band. He hadn't been in the band for years. Zach had already been our singer.
Yes.
That's important to know. But with Zach, we tried out. We didn't want to cattle call or everything, but we tried out but when Zach came in to our rehearsal, and the whole band was there, and we're playing live, just everything live with him. And I remember halfway through the first time, I was so excited. I'm like, we're born again. We can do this. We can continue. Zach was so good at he can really sing, and he has like theater experience, and his voice was similar to Steve, but not kind of like when Brian Johnson replaced Bon Scott.
Yes.
It's close enough. People accepted that. You know what I mean? Or when Sammy Hagar replaced, David Lee Roth,
Mm-hmm.
people are closer to and Zach can really do that. So kudos to Zach for me, it's like, I'm just trying to be in the best band I can be and go, look at how good my band is. It's always about the live thing. And Zach just picked us right up, and it made everyone excited in the band, and it was like a rebirth or something.
Well, this album, Mercury Comet, is the first original album from the band in more than a decade.
Yeah.
Why was 2026 the right time to make a statement record instead of continuing to just tour on all of the hits we've talked about so far?
It's a very simple answer. Because towards the end of 2024, our manager, Robert Hayes, came up to me and said, "You need to make a new record of all original material." And I go, "Why?" He goes, "Just do it. You needed it. We need it for the band. You need it make it like Fush Yu Mang. Go back to your roots. Make a ska-punk kind of record. Make it like it just." I'm like, "Well," he said, "Just do it." So it was a command. And I remember thinking at the time, wow, this might be hard. And it was kind of, but it was also super fun.
Well, you've talked about that bachelor pad, lounge pop, 60s Martin Denny DNA that's always kind of been hiding inside these Smash Mouth songs. Was that something that you were consciously recognizing while recording Mercury Comet, or did you notice it as the album started to take shape?
That's a good question. I had the songs previously. I had a backlog of songs that unfortunately Steve didn't want to do for whatever reason, and which kind of annoyed me. But now, and they were Smash Mouth songs, and they were in this vault almost, and now I could redo them with my new band. And so I was prepared for this, and I wrote a couple new ones, and Zach has one, and Michael has one. So we had material, we had the material, and I felt strong about it. And we took it song by song. And so to make sure that there's quality control, it is daunting for me, because it's like, this is the first record I've made without Steve or Greg, So like these were my brothers, so I feel like there's a legacy for me to uphold, and I'm nervous and worried, but I really believe that this is Smash Mouth fans will understand this record and like it, because I really tried to make it. I don't want to alienate everyone, and we're not going to go off on, so it's not going to be Spinal Tap going, "Hope you enjoy our new direction." No, I want to make a Smash Mouth record for the fans, for everybody. And I did the best I could. I really, really tried my heart, and and kept that in mind. And I hope everyone likes it because that's what I was going for, you know?
Well, we're going to dive into some of the songs now, but I also want to ask you, I'd mentioned that Greg is not a part of this album. So I do want to reflect on that for a minute because you said you still keep in touch with him and you're still in good
Still very
grace.
yeah.
Has he heard the album?
I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't want him to know. You know, Greg and I are still very good friends. And he left the band for his own reason. He's he is raising a family. He's allowed to do whatever he wants. He's welcome back anytime. There's no animosity or anything there. People do that sometimes. Everything's good blood with Greg. He's my best friend. And I thought I'd wait a bit to tell him. Then he's like, well, have you got to do something? I go, yeah, I kind of been recording some songs lately, you know. And he likes it. He's been very encouraging. The ones I've showed him. The first one I showed him was Midnight Doctor. I thought I'd start with that one, you know.
Nice.
Midnight Doctor, morning regretter. Midnight Doctor, morning forgetter. Twitching and even, digging for treasure. Rhyming and stealing my leisure. Midnight Doctor.
Yeah, Greg's always very supportive. There's never going to be any, you know, I'm so worried about, but I hope he likes it.
Well, the story behind Better Believer, because you had mentioned Steve and these songs earlier, starts with a challenge from Steve.
It was.
Welcome to my home. Train tracks under my window. Landlord calling again. What for? None of my business. Well, must be his. Don't know. All I'm thinking is, I want you under my skin. I want this thing to begin on the right foot. Step this time. Come on now. I'm still looking to find a better believer. I'm still looking to find a better believer.
Have you found that some of the songs that end up meaning the most are the ones that are born from having something to prove very similar to All Star and then The Morning Comes?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. When he said that, we were in our office, and it was Steve and I and our manager, and we were talking about recording, you know, songs that I wanted to record. And Steve he said to me, he goes, you can't write a hit song. You're not Greg Camp. You're not as good as songwriters. And that boy, you know, which is true, but that irked me, man. It really did. Because so he's like, we come in next week with something. So I took that as a challenge. I really did. And he goes, I want you to come in here, no tricks, play it on acoustic guitar and sing it for me next week. And he did it so arrogantly that I was really dug in that I'm going to, you know. And next week I went in, you know, and I'm like, here we go. And then when I was done, he was like, okay, we can record it. I was kind of like, I got you.
Well, listening to the album Mercury Comet, I think personally it exists somewhere between the ska energy of Fush Yu Mang and the pop craftsmanship of Astro Lounge.
Well, let me ask you this honestly. Do you like it? I mean, you're
of course.
I made it for you, you know, like
for me, the song Mental Vacation really jumps out in that regard of that space in between those two albums.
Space in between, yes.
I don't want to see the news today. Every time I turn it on, the world is self-destructing. Maybe I just need to get away. I'm thinking of a sunny place to make my destination. And I know it's no solution, but I just wanna close my eyes and be at the ocean. I'm soaking up the sun. Oh yeah. It's time to pause my current situation. Everybody needs to have some fun sometimes, to take us all off on a mental vacation. Looking up
And same with Monsters. That was the one that Michael wrote.
I see it every night upon the local news. They might drive Cybertrucks or BMWs. The monsters are moving in and there's nowhere to hide. They're coming for us all and they spread like slime, building their McMansions here in record time. They feed upon us all and they need more brains. And they might look just like your neighbors do, but they're feeding off of me and you. The monsters are moving on a bar block.
Was the balance between the sound of Fush Yu Mang and Astrolounge something you were actively chasing? Or did it naturally emerge with the mindset of, let's go back to the beginning with this album?
Oh, yeah. It's part of the arrangement, of course. It's got to be true to the sound, starting with the drums. We have the best drummer in the world with Randy Cook. And once we had the drums down, and I'll admit, we do record these days as, you know, we rehearse, we do everything, but we do it individually, one instrument. We do, you know, we all play. But once Randy Cook's drums were done, that was set the whole, it's like building a house, the whole foundation for the whole thing. We had the strongest drums. And I had the bass was easy to get through, you know, through it. But I'm always aware of the tones and the sounds of Smash Mouth, the bass tone, what the guitar is supposed to sound like. So I'm kind of guiding the whole thing as we're going through it. And my the motto was, I want you guys to have the freedom to express yourself, and I want your personalities and the way you play to come through on this record. I want you to put your own thing and don't be afraid to do your own thing, as long as it's exactly what I tell you to do. But it really did came together. Like yes, I was very aware of making a Smash Mouth. I'm not trying to, it's like AC/DC. I'm not trying to, we are Smash Mouth. If I wanted to do that, I'd start a new band.
Right.
But this is Smash Mouth. I want it to sound like Smash Mouth. And I hope I did, you know?
Oh, you certainly did. And as a bass player, I have to say, when you have a drummer to lock into, it truly makes being a bass player more fun.
So, you know, it's the whole thing. When we play live, I have nothing in my wedge besides Randy's drums. I don't need to hear, and some vocals. I don't need to hear anything else. The drums is, you know, you're a team.
Well, another song from the album I want to bring up is, because the second I saw the title, it immediately jumped out at me. Had Enough of You, Baby. Because my brain immediately went to Can't Get Enough of You,
Okay,
Baby.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough. I will confess. Confession time, all right?
I had enough of you, baby. I've had enough of you, baby. Every day, every way. You can pull the wool with your charms and atrocities. No one knows you like I do. When you rub elbows with the best of them, take them for a ride, make them feel like they could.
All right, Paul. So was that connection intentional?
I'll tell you the truth. This is honest to God truth. I'm coming clean here. For years and years and years and years, when we're doing sound checks, very often we sound checked with Can't Get Enough of You. And the reason why we would sound check with it is because it was simple and it had all the different instruments and everyone could dial their stuff in. It was a nice, easy tune to sound check with. Okay. So we sound checked with it for, I don't know, thousands. And of course, when I'm waiting for the hippie to get his keyboard, I'm thinking in my head, I've had enough of you, baby. You know? I just couldn't help it. You know, I've had enough of you, baby. So yes, it did go from that. I'm like, well, can I make a song out of it? Is that like plagiarism? But not really, you know?
No, it's, as far as I'm concerned, you're revisiting the concept of the original from the opposite perspective. So I found the concept about it fascinating.
And I'm sure as a bass player, you noticed that the bass line was very similar to Watching on the Sun.
Yes, it was almost like a hat tip to the past with some perspective of all the years. To me, I thought it was a very defining moment on the album.
And yeah, man, I'll be honest. I'll be honest with you. I'm trying to make a Smash Mouth song, you know, all the elements of it. because that's what Smash Mouth is. I'm trying to get you stoked on this. Like, I want you to like it, you know? I didn't want to alienate anyone.
No, and I feel like there's different eras of Smash Mouth fans because I know several that are my friends that lean harder into the sound of Fush Yu Mang because
Right.
they're more ska-punk fans. And I have friends that lean more towards the Astro Lounge because they are more pop fans. And I feel like this album toes the line between the two, which gives fans of both eras something to sink their teeth into.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. That's what I was going for.
Well, my follow-up to that, though, is when people hear Mercury Comet for the first time, what's the biggest misconception about today's Smash Mouth that you hope disappears?
That people say, oh, that guy doesn't sound like Steve, or that's not Steve. That's not fair, man. Zach has a great voice, and I defend it to the end, you know, he has enough of that, like, see, and he's a great singer, and he did a great job on the record, except Zach. I have huge belief in Zach, and I'm going to stand by him, man. But it's been a wonderful, like I said, just the fact that in 2026, I'm sitting here talking to you about this is amazing, you know, as it is.
Now, before we wrap up, I have to go down the Rickroll rabbit hole with you. Smash Mouth has a long history with cover songs like we talked about, but your cover of Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up feels like a much different choice than some of the band's earlier covers because we talked about the 60s and 70s garage rock sound, where this was an 80s pop track that defied expectations in the way All Star did, where the song became larger than life.
I got to give credit to our associate, one of my coworkers, Ronix Apolius, who's like our co-manager along with Robert. And years ago, like maybe 6 years ago, 7 years ago, you got to do Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley. I'm like, no effing way I'm ever doing that. So I like everything, no way, you know. But then Randy Cook, our drummer, had an idea to be like, you said you're never gonna give you up, and like a punk rock style. And I thought, okay, that's cool. We can do it that way, you know, like. And so it was to appease our wonderful co-manager associate, Ronix Apolius. Okay, let's just do it and just record it. What the hell, you know? Zach was like, I think Zach secretly might have wanted to be in the Backstreet Boys or something. And he got smacked out, you know, like,
And that stays in your set now, correct?
It does,
Of
because
course.
he can really sing it, you know, people like it.
Well, Mercury Comet is available everywhere now. Pick it up wherever you stream music, or more importantly, pick up the vinyl or the CD, because like I always preach on this show, physical media is king. Paul, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on My Weekly Mixtape.
Pleasure's all mine.
And if you have a favorite song from Mercury Comet that you want to talk about, I want to hear from you. myweeklymixtape@gmail.com. Hit me up at myweeklymixtape on all the social media haunts, or use the contact page at myweeklymixtape.com. If you like what you're hearing on the show and you'd like to support it, there is a Patreon mixtaper community at patreon.com/myweeklymixtape. It's free to join, and there's several tiers available if you'd like to support the show a little extra. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever it is you listen, if this is your first time listening, first and foremost, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And after you do that, leave a like, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review, leave a thumbs up, leave a gold star, you know, do all the things. Help spread the word about My Weekly Mixtape to other music fans in your life. Once again, my name is Brian Colburn. This has been My Weekly Mixtape, and until next time, enjoy the tunes.